Alright, welcome back to the Supercoach Nuff channel. In this video, we're going to, react to a comment that came up on the initial team build video. And I guess the comment was that it's a bit, it's not ideal, I suppose, that they show the ownership percentages of players. Given that, we end up with a lot of copycat teams. Like if you go by percentage, you can see the most popular options are the two sort of gun rookies in Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and then Josh Allen is the most popular keeper in the position. So a lot of teams could build very much in using those three, and go through the running backs. Same with CMC, Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Brooks is a popular cheapie, and so on like that. So what I thought I would do is put together a squad, a bit of a point of difference squad or a differential squad, depending on your preferred vernacular. And I'm going to set the ownership percentages under 10%. So basically, if it's 9% or lower, single digits, we're going to look at those options. So I guess to kick it off, we'll have a look at quarterback. And the first name that sort of jumps out at me straight away at 9% is Jalen Hurts. So probably the least popular of the guns when you look at Josh Allen, Mahomes, Lamar, Jalen Hurts. And I've opted for Anthony Richardson as a sort of cut price keeper option. Probably, I've got him 5th overall after those four. But seeing Jalen Hurts down there, and I guess he is my ride or die guy in my auction draft league. I've played 4 years. I've bought him every year, and he has not steered me wrong. He is probably the first guy I'm wanting to target, but there's a lot of value in these cheapy guys. So that's where we're fishing. In terms of a cheapie, there's two big options there: Sam Darnold, Bo Nix. I'm going to lean towards Sam Darnold just because of the experience. He's maybe not set the world on fire in the NFL previously, but I think going to the Vikings is a nice upgrade for his situation. You've got an elite option in Justin Jefferson. TJ Hawkinson should be available in the coming weeks, or maybe not the coming weeks, but mid-season. So, a couple of reliable options there. And I guess his competition in JJ McCarthy is out for the season with a knee injury. So nice job security, particularly to start the year. Bo Nix is another great option at that cheap price. I guess the issues with him is just he probably doesn't have the cattle around him like a Sam Darnold. So, and the 400k always comes in handy. And then I guess at a mid-price option, I don't hate Aaron Rodgers. Obviously with a big discount given his season lasted all of 4 snaps last year, 5 if you include the one to his leg. But he is a gun of the past. I guess we're not expecting him to be elite because he doesn't run the ball. But you can see like a Joe Burrow at 16 mil, CJ Stroud at 20. He's sort of very much in that type of mold. So we can project a bit of profit. And I guess also it means we don't have to start Sam Darnold. So, decent quarterback room with a bit of point of difference about it. As we go down, there might be a couple of options. If you're super brave, swap Rodgers for Bryce Young. Carolina has made big improvements to their offense over the offseason. So, given that he was a rookie last year, he's got a year of experience, and, at his price, there is a little bit of room for growth. You look at the other sort of, not keepers, but, sort of permanent quarterback options, they've got, between that 16 to 20 million in value. On the running backs, obviously we're skipping over CMC and some popular options. Starting with Nick Chubb at 9%. We're not starting with Nick Chubb. He's out long term. He should be very close to 0%, I would imagine. However, there is some value down here. Starting with Isaiah Pacheco. So, real workhorse type role there at Kansas City, which is one of the best teams in the league. Um, so we'll lock him in. Kyron Williams is a good option, but I guess we'll try and fit him in. We might have to cut a corner or two somewhere. But, at 7% as a borderline, keeper type option. I guess maybe we'll overlook him. Just I think the price is a bit much. If he was cheaper, we'd put him in this. Another one around the same price who has that potential like Pacheco is James Cook. Very similar profile. I guess the advantage with James Cook is there's a bit of a smaller wide receiver room. But Buffalo are sort of very much trying to copy Kansas City's style. It would appear with, they've got a quality tight end that they're sort of making the focal point. Then they have a workhorse running back that can, catch some passes as well and do the business. So, I think James Cook is a really good point of difference at 5%. Another one, Travis Etienne, sort of copy and paste what we've just said for these two. He's far and away the main running back at Jacksonville. So, we'll put him in the conversation. And then my guy, Alvin Kamara, so a bit on the expensive side, but, he definitely qualifies at 2%. Again, you could almost, copy and paste what we said about these guys. I guess with Kamara, though, he's an elite pass catcher. And other than an Olave, they don't really have a lot of quality options to throw to. So Kamara does offer that dual threat. If we're looking at cheapies, one guy I've looked at and probably will bring into my team is Rico Dowdle. So there's a bit of a whisper that he will be the running back one. It doesn't mean that he'll play 100% of the snaps. They'll still use Big Zeke for probably some short yardage type stuff, but Rico will do a lot of the early down work. And at his price point, I think that offers a nice bit of value as a cheap option. And then after that, we are struggling a little bit, but we'll go with a Jaleel McLaughlin rather. So at 5.6, so very similar price to Dowdle. Is probably the running back two behind Javonte Williams, but Javonte Williams hasn't had the most fortunate run with the injury. So there's every chance that McLaughlin, has some usage early in the season, but is only one injury away from becoming the main man there at Denver. So, you could look at him as a cheap option on your bench. Onto the wide receivers, and again, a lot of the guns and rookies are highly touted. And when you've got 8 to fill as well, you are going to see a lot of high ownership. We could start looking from about 11% with AJ Brown, Puka Nakua, but we will go with the 9% rule and down. So straight away, Debo and Jalen Waddle are pretty well locked into this pod squad. Debo is a wide receiver, but he does run the ball as well, so sort of like a running back in reverse. And especially if Brandon Ayuk gets the trade to Pittsburgh, then Debo does become a really good value. Jalen Waddle, obviously stuck behind Tyreek Hill for the wide receiver one job, but probably the best wide receiver two in the league. So, you wouldn't go too far wrong with him. All it takes is a little injury for Hill and Waddle becomes the man there in Miami. I guess, Nico Collins, Stefan Diggs, you could take a pot shot at one of the wide receivers there at Houston, but if you did, you go a little bit further down, a lot further down, and you grab yourself some Tank Dell. So Dell has the college combination with CJ Stroud. It's probably rated wide receiver 3, but behind those other guys. But I think you'll find that even when they don't sort of go with 3 wide receivers and just the 2, that he will still find his way onto the field. So I guess particularly at his ownership percentage of less than 2% is definitely worth a sneaky look. Um, in the between, we've missed a couple of really solid options. Um, Mike Evans, so you know consistent. Might not have the upside of some of the other picks, which is why he's overlooked. But if you're just looking for consistent scores, here's your go-to guy. You could look at the likes of a Chris Olave, um, as a wide receiver one there in New Orleans and the clear and obvious target. Zay Flowers at Baltimore, although they do have another guy that we'll mention in a bit. Um, but one guy I think could be really interesting is Terry McLaurin. So, um, he's another one sort of in the Mike Evans frame, super consistent, but probably hasn't had the best quarterbacks throwing to him. But he definitely has an upgrade with the rookie and Jaden Daniels. And I guess also some of the target competition is gone with Jahan Dotson getting a trade to the Philly Eagles. So I think McLaurin at 2% at his price point could be a sneaky one to look at. And then I guess the last of the starters is Deontay Johnson. So I talked about Bryce Young briefly before in the quarterback conversation. Yeah, Johnson is probably one of the main pieces they've brought over to boost the offense. Um, has a little bit of issue with injuries, which is probably why his ceiling is limited. But also he was at Pittsburgh previously, and the quality of quarterbacks, they definitely weren't number one draft picks like a Bryce Young. So I think it's good things for both of those guys. So I'll whack Deontay Johnson in this squad. I might run out of cash, but I guess a couple of cheaper options. Josh Palmer, so listed sort of behind Lad McConkey in the wide receiver pecking order at the Chargers, but does have experience on his side in that he has played a season or two. I can't remember if it's one or two from uh, with Justin Herbert, so they do have somewhat of a combination. And then I guess for a super cheap option, Jalen Polk. So not a lot of competition there at New England in the wide receiver room. Listed as number two behind Demario Douglas. So I think if you are looking for a point of difference in the cheapie category, here's your guy. I guess if we need to downgrade, I might be bringing in Marvin Mims, but we'll see how we're going with money. It's getting a little bit tight, but we'll be okay, hopefully. So with the tight ends, I guess a lot of the popular options we already know about, but I guess the two that jump out in the pod category are Mark Andrews, Jake Ferguson. So Mark Andrews absolutely, has been tight end one in the previous years. Has had a couple of issues with injury, but he plays for a very good offensive team. He has Lamar Jackson thrown to him, which is pretty handy. But yeah, he's one of the main receivers there at Baltimore. So if you like your Travis Kelsey's, your Sam Laportas, and you want to pivot to someone of a similar profile, then Andrews is your guy. And Jake Ferguson, I guess a bit of an unheralded star there at the Cowboys, but probably after CD Lamb, he is their number two go-to target. They don't really have a massively deep wide receiver room. So I think, if you're looking for that little bit of a discount, that, Jake Ferguson is your guy. And then in terms of cheapies, Sinot is, I think, probably going to be the number one at the Commanders there over Zach Ertz. So it could be a bit of value. But I'm going to go with Noah Fant on the bench. So a little bit more expensive at 4.73. But no real competition there at the Seahawks. They do have three decent wide receivers. But I guess they've also in the past had a couple of extra tight ends that have shared the workload. But they've moved on. So it could be Noah Fant's room for the taking. Well, we might run out of money. We'll see how we go. With the kickers, so the two cheapies are the quality options, obviously. And then Aubrey, who was really good last year, but he was a cheapie, which is probably why he's popular this year. Everyone wants him back. Justin Tucker is, the GOAT when it comes to kicking. But after that, we'll just go with the other cheapies. So Rijkaard and Cam Little or Tanner Brown possibly. Both these guys are going to be the kickers for their teams. Not the worst offenses, probably not the best offenses. Probably not as good as the Rams or the Lions. So again, this is a position you don't worry too much about. So you don't have to get fancy. You can just pick the popular guys, and it's okay. But if you're trying to stand out from the crowd, these two would be the option. So then on to the defense, and I don't know if I can squeeze them in. But I guess, obviously a lot of people going with Washington just because they're cheap and then just picking a defense to stick with. That's the way I'm going. And I just noticed they're not on the list, but the Kansas City Chiefs at 3%, I think, for their price point and their ability, they are the best pick, and they're the ones I'm going with. And then I have run a bit short on cash, but I guess if you look at other fantasy sites like ESPN, for example, they actually predict that the New York Jets and Cleveland Browns will be the top two. So I think it's actually Browns number one, Jets number two. So, either of these options at 8%, 5%, respectively would be great options. I guess, tough fixtures first up might put a few people off. But even if you look at the 3-round average or projected 3-week average, they're pretty high up on that list. And I guess, you can throw in the New Orleans Saints there, pretty highly projected. In the first 3 weeks, might be, playing Carolina first up is a nice matchup, potentially. So, projected best in week 1 because of that. So that probably has something to factor into it. But I guess if you're setting and forgetting, it could be these two guys. So, might just get rid of Palmer and bring in, I think, was it Mims was the cheap guy we were looking at. Don't know where he is. I guess maybe one I will throw on there just a bit cheaper. Could be an interesting look at is Tyler Boyd. So moving from Cincinnati to Tennessee, they do still have a couple of pretty decent wide receivers there. I think Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins. They are a bit on the older side though. So Tyler Boyd will play out of the slot and, could get a lot of targets. But yeah, we'll throw him in because then we can actually afford a second defense. And then, it's toss of the coin. I'll go New York Jets for this video. But as I said, Cleveland Browns are another great option at that differential. If we look at those highly owned teams, Washington, as I said, is just super cheap. Again, you don't have to be fancy with this. If you just want to, save your money, you don't really need to switch defenses around too much. Pick and stick and just go with Washington. Free up the budget elsewhere. The Cowboys, had a couple of massive games last year, hence the 20-point average. But I don't think you can rely on that on a regular basis. San Fran, quite a good defense, so makes sense. And in that same sort of price point. But as I said, these guys are more highly owned, highly projected by other sites. And, Kansas City, I think, even cheaper again. But, so that's, I guess, the squad. We've pretty much spent all the money and, very differential looking in nature. But yeah, it's not to say that you have to go with these points of difference. It just, I guess, looking at some options and saying, well, it's not necessarily the case that we all need to get on these guys. For example, I've gone past Brooks and Benson. Brooks is injured. I'm not parking a non-playing running back on my bench. And Benson, I think, might just take a little bit of time to get going behind James Conner. Whereas Zamir White and Enrico Dowdle, these are the guys that will probably be playing from game week one, I guess it's called in NFL. So, I'm going to have them. Must have spoke for too long. The microphone cut out. So, yeah, as I was saying, these guys are playing from week one, so I want to get them in. Someone like Polk, I think, is super sneaky. Doesn't have the best quarterback, which doesn't help, but I guess he is someone that could be a bit of a slow burn through the year. Tyler Boyd, as I said, is one to watch out for, and then these mid price madness sort of guys. There is definitely upside with all of them. But we'll wrap the video up there. As I said, just wanted to throw out some different ideas. I think I might be getting the video going at the moment, looking at my updated team. And actually, no, I think I was just the cheapies I looked at. I'll do the updated team a bit closer to the first game week. Maybe sort of across the weekend, I think might be best. Yeah, so if you've got any questions, comments, thoughts, feel free to add them below this video. Give us a like if you enjoy the NFL content. If you haven't yet done so and would like to, sign up for the league. The league code link will be in the description below the video. Subscribe for all the fantasy sports content on the channel. And then other than that, we'll catch you in the next one.